Thank you for tuning in once again to his Vine and Fig Tree podcast. My name is Kurt Olson. I'm your host. I'm coming to you on Wednesday, May 7th. And didn't know when this was going to happen. I'm glad it's happening at a normal time. There were a variety of factors that played into that, which I'm not going to get into. But I do want to kick off this podcast overseas. We have the conclave that has started with the Catholic Church, as I believe there's like 170 or 80 some cardinals that are going to be selecting the new pope, probably within the next couple of days. I would suspect by the end of the week we have one, unless there is some grand debate going on. The average has been 2 to 3 days that has gone with like the last 8 selections of a pope. So that's happening at the Sistine Chapel, and of course there will be the white smoke that emerges when there is the naming of a new pope. So you can be expecting that in the coming days. And like I said, what was it, a couple of weeks ago? After the death of Francis, I'm far more interested on where this pope comes from and what their theological background is. Are they going to be continuing to move the Catholicism toward progressivism that Francis was doing? Or are they going to steer this back toward more conventional Christian beliefs? Um, so there's that. Just yesterday, we had the U.S. reach an agreement with the Houthis. Houthis, again, by way of explanation, one of the Iranian proxies in the Middle East. You have the Hamas as a proxy in Gaza. You have Hezbollah as an Iranian proxy in Lebanon. And the Houthis were an Iranian proxy in Yemen. Yemen's on the Arabian Peninsula. They were wreaking much havoc with traffic in the Red Sea, cargo ships, and others. And we had been engaged in nearly a 2 week confrontation with, or 2 month confrontation with them. And we had an agreement. The Houthis want us to stop shooting, and they're going to stop shooting as well. The question will be, can we trust the Houthis? That remains to be seen. Meanwhile, we've had the U.S. and Israel talk about long-term plans in Gaza, which, of course, Trump continues to talk about this Riviera of the Middle East, and frankly, it looks, walks, talks like a boondoggle, and I wouldn't have anything to do with trying to establish some kind of a functioning location on the Gaza Strip. I would stay far away from it, but that's me. Meanwhile, there was an interesting story that emerged in the Jerusalem Post. Actually, it wasn't a story, it was a column. Not going to attempt the names because they're very Hebrew in their in both the first and last names, so I'm not going to butcher that. But this ran on Sunday the 4th. Hamas's next front? Sudan's Islamist army and the African threat to Israel. This was two people who collaborated on an opinion piece. There is one paragraph I want to read because it's a nice segue into the next thing I want to bring to your attention. Sudan, once seen as a promising partner under the Abraham Accords, and the Abraham Accords were a series of agreements that surfaced in Trump 1. Sudan, once seen as a promising partner under the Abraham Accords, is now collapsing into a stronghold for global jihadists. The United Arab Emirates intelligence recently foiled an illegal shipment of weapons destined for the Sudanese armed forces, which are openly aligning with radical Islamist groups. The same network has supported terrorists behind recent attacks in Kashmir, India, smuggled Iranian weapons to Hamas, and previously trained Osama bin Laden's fighters, all under Sudanese armed forces protection. An interesting paragraph that these two authors make in the Jerusalem Post. I'm going to link the full column in the comments to the podcast so people can read that at their leisure. But they make a very compelling case that Sudan's becoming increasingly more dangerous and that it is not a northern African peacemaker. A lot of conflict over time in Sudan. They now have the southern part that's split off in their own country. And it mentions, or the writers mention Kashmir, India. Because just yesterday, we started seeing initial conflict between India and Pakistan, and reports out of Pakistan that at least 26 civilians are dead. Although, in an age when, even in an age that is modern like ours and the access to instant information, don't know how legitimate that is. But I say all that to say this: Pakistan and India are two nuclear powers, and the last thing we need is two countries with itchy trigger fingers with access to nukes. And that will demand everybody's attention as we have yet another conflict. With more in recent years, Russia attacking Ukraine. We've had the conflict between Hamas and Israel after Hamas attacked Israel on October 7, 2023. We've had saber rattling in Asia with China, Taiwan, and now this. Challenging times. But that does lead to something interesting. Just late last week, I believe this was last Thursday, it was either Thursday or Friday, Mike Waltz, who was Donald Trump's national security advisor, got fired from that position. He and Alex Wong were regarded as significant players in allowing Jeffrey Goldberg onto a signal chat on events involving the U.S. and Yemen. And Team Trump played this entire story as, okay, yeah, the guy's getting fired, but I'm going to name him as the UN ambassador. So we're just shifting him into a spot where we think he might be better suited. Well, the problem is this. Additional reporting surfaced over the weekend And you come to find out, here was the rub with all of this stuff going on between Michael Waltz and Team Trump too. So Michael Waltz and Michael Waltz is a former Florida congressman, involved in a lot of stuff with foreign relations and intelligence and stuff like that. And one of the reasons why he got national security advisor for Trump too. And there's this contest right now, and it kind of surprises me because I thought there wouldn't be any neocons that would see the light of day in the Trump administration. But there appears to be a tug of war going on between forces that want another war, this time with Iran, and um, those who are tired of the endless wars, and we need to stop conflict, not promote it or be engaged in it. And the thing that people are saying about Michael Waltz, and some of the reporting that I've seen, is that Michael Waltz was too cozy with Israel because Israel wanted to do an attack in the month of May on Iran. That's not going to happen because the U.S. is engaged in talks with Iran, and who really knows where that's going to go. And some are fingering Secretary of State Michael Rubio, who is now the interim national security advisor, as someone who wants war with Iran. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out in the coming days and weeks and months. What are the voices that win the day here? Because J.D. Vance is tired of endless wars. A variety of others in Team Trump. But Marco Rubio, in a prominent spot as Secretary of State, and now National Security Advisor, at least on an interim basis. And that's going to create some interesting tension that will be playing out, probably more behind the scenes, but playing out nonetheless. So, with all of that out of the way, I want to come to a couple of things that are on the U.S. home front. The first one is Newark, New Jersey. I don't know how many of you fly or consistently use airplanes as mode of transportation now. But late last week, there was a Newark Airport air traffic controller basically saying it's not safe. Don't fly into Newark. I'm not going to read an entire story, but I do want to give you a flavor for what this person said. Newark Liberty International Airport is not safe for travelers. One air traffic controller at the delay-plagued travel hub reportedly warned. It is not safe. It is not a safe situation right now for the flying public. The federal air safety employee reportedly told NBC News correspondent Tom Costello, and I'm reading from the New York Post, which basically has taken its report from those remarks. Really an incredible statement, unsolicited. He just said that to me, and separately, don't fly into Newark. Avoid Newark at all costs, Costello recounted on MSNBC. The airport, which served 49 million travelers in 2024 and is the second busiest in the New York City area, has been drowning in delays and cancellations for days. And apparently, there was a strike by some employees at the airport. And there's even headlines today that air traffic control lost contact with, it was either several or all of the planes in the air over their airport for a spell. So, if you're part of the traveling public, um, take heed. It's not safe to fly into Newark Liberty Airport at this time, and really should be avoided at all costs. On Sunday, Donald Trump had a interview with Kirsten Welker from NBC's Meet the Press, and they talked about a variety of things, immigration, um, and one of the things that came up in that interview was that Donald Trump personally identified J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio as potential successors to Donald Trump. Now, there are supposedly are people who still think that Trump should run for a third term. Bad idea. Bad idea because he's going to be 82 in 2028. And that's a conversation the country must start having on the age of our elected officials. Now, Trump's, Trump seems to be fine in terms of his cognitive alertness and whatnot. And after a recent physical, he went straight to the media and talked about the results of that. But uh, so Trump identifies Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the vice president. The Republican field in 2028 is going to be much, much bigger than that. Um, One could certainly expect some members of the Senate and House having delusions of grandeur. Um, I could expect Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, in on this. Nikki Haley, the former governor of New York, I believe she was the UN ambassador in Trump 1. She being in on this. I can see Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. I can see Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. Um, a variety of other Republican governors. Um, and Ted Cruz. Uh, so the field will be large. And I don't think either Rubio or Vance has necessarily an automatic advantage. And it will be most interesting. It'll be most interesting if Trump decides to endorse someone or let the process unfold. So there's that. And the last thing I want to bring to your attention here, and it's a doozy, folks. It's a doozy. And I'm not going to read the whole story because it's extremely long. But the New York Post did a story after a Tucker Carlson interview of a former George H.W. Bush official. And the revelations are stunning. Let me give you just a little bit of a flavor of this because this story emerged on Monday. Um, the federal government has secretly spent trillions building an elaborate network of subterranean cities where the rich and powerful can shelter during a near extinction event, a former Bush White House official sensationally claimed. About about 170 such bunkers have been built across the country since 1998, including some resting beneath the oceans off the U.S. coast. 74-year-old Catherine Austin Fitz told Tucker Carlson during a recent appearance on his podcast. It's preparation for catastrophe. Now, Fitz served as an assistant secretary of housing and urban development under President George H.W. Bush in 88 and in 89 and 90. That means she was working for Jack Kemp back in the day. And this lady claims $21 trillion in taxpayer dollars were funneled into the project between 1998 and 2015. So this takes us to the end of Clinton, all of W. Bush, and nearly the entire time of Barack Obama's presidency. And the story goes on to say that a Michigan State University professor, economics professor by the name of Mark Skidmore, um, latched onto some information and really wanted to see the veracity of this. And the more he dug into it, the more he was realizing that, yeah, some unauthorized money was being spent. And the story is there was $21 trillion in unauthorized spending that came from both the Defense Department and the Department of Housing and Urban Development in this window of time, 98 to 2015. And it was all used to build these elaborate locations underground and under the water. And I have said several times on this podcast, and I'm going to say it again. Our government is broken. When you hear this kind of a story, and it comes with the kind of detail that's coming forth, and you're still left wondering, really? This happened? This has got to be, she's got to be off on the numbers, and this can't be real, and that's not that can't be a real thing. If this is true, $21 trillion in unauthorized money. This is an incredible breach of trust by multiple presidents and failure of the US Congress once again. Because the Congress is supposed to have their fingers on these types of issues. And then the other one is, how did no one realize this was going on? An inspector general report surfaced from it, from either of the two departments, Defense or HUD. And this thing is just so shocking in its in what's coming. But 170 underground and underwater, I'm going to call them miniature cities that are meant for kind of apocalyptic scenarios where people can go underground and save themselves. Just, is our government capable of this? Yes. Is our government capable of this and keeping it from the public? Yes. But it still requires a whole lot of explaining from Clinton, W, and Barack Obama. And the question is, did they know? Did they know this was going on? If indeed this is going on. And frankly, with this report having come out from a Tucker Carlson podcast and followed up on, if this isn't true, someone with a whole lot of information about it not being true had better step forward, or this is something that will continued to stand the test of time, and people are like wondering, how did this happen? Um, where I sit, folks, as someone who spent 20 plus years in journalism, someone who has been following current events for the better part of 40 plus years, um, this falls under the category of the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And there could be a lot of ways that $21 trillion was used, including getting rid of our national debt, instead of the things that it's gone on over time, and it's gone up to 36 trillion at this point. Just absolutely alarming information from this podcast. And you would think that there's some reporters near Michigan State University, where Mark Skidmore is, would have uh, microphones and notebooks that they'd be interviewing him and a variety of others. But supposedly, this is a thing. This has happened, and this happened between 1998 and 2015. So that's all I have this week. But this is a reminder that I this podcast is on Apple Podcasts. This podcast is on Spotify. This podcast is on YouTube. And if you enjoy the information that I bring to each week, please share it. Also, drop in a column again on Sunday. And until next time, God bless and goodbye.